You're listening to the Pursuit Podcast with Jason Sharp and Wesley Null. Hey there, thanks for joining us again on the Pursuit Podcast. Today's episode may look a little bit different, but this honestly, this may be too vulnerable for me. I don't know. We'll see. We may have to record a new podcast here in just a little bit if this one's too much. But something for me in my life and in my walk with Christ has, or really more so my ministry, has always been, I feel like I've been seeking mentors. Mm-hmm. Somebody to help me along in my ministry, to help develop me, and to just invest in me as a minister. And I've struggled to find mentors. Is something that I've really found. I've really struggled to find people who want to be a real mentor. And you and I have worked together for 5 years. You've been my boss. And during that, you have become a mentor as well. There's a balance there. You're also my boss, but you are one of the few people that I would say are mentors in my life. In fact, really, there's probably only one other person that I would say at times plays a mentorship role in my life. And really, even in that one, it's more just like at times, it's not a regular investment. So finding mentors has been a real challenge for me. Mm-hmm. Finding people who are willing to invest and sow into me, I feel like has been a real challenge. And it's been really difficult to find people who are willing to say, like, I know where you've been, I see what you've gone through, mm-hmm. and here's what I would do. And I feel like I'm probably not the only person that has gone through that early in ministry. And that's not just in ministry. I feel like that's probably a lot of young men in life, mm-hmm. walking through being a father or walking through being a husband and navigating the challenges of being a young man or being a young leader. It doesn't even have to be a man. Being a young leader, mm-hmm. finding those people who aren't scared that you're coming up behind them to steal their thunder, but are willing to sow into you and invest in you. So I think before we dive into really anything else, I want to ask you a question of, you've got 20 years on me, not to expose you.
No, everybody wouldn't have known that, but yeah, you're right.
You've got 20 years on me.
Yep.
I won't tell my age because then that would put you out.
That's okay.
If you could speak to yourself 20 years ago, and we'll look at this in 3 parts. If you could tell yourself in ministry one thing 20 years ago, what would it be? If you could tell yourself in your marriage 20 years ago one thing, what would it be? And if you could tell yourself just in life, be it in finances or health or whatever, 20 years ago, what would that be?
Wow. That's a pretty loaded question.
Yes, it is.
There's, first of all, I think you said it was spiritual, right? The spiritual was first. I'm getting
ministry.
older, remember?
Yes, ministry.
I'm getting older, so sometimes I don't remember.
Or spiritual, whatever, whichever.
Ministry in general. 20 years ago, we've been in ministry now almost 24 years. So 20 years ago, I was about in my 5th year of ministry. But even starting out, it was basically the same thing. I was scared to ask for help. One of the things that I thought that I had to know, and this was kind of, I guess from the business world, because I grew up in the business world a little bit. Graduating from Lee University, and I went into a full-time career outside of ministry. And the career I went into, I was supposed to know what I was supposed to know. Does that make sense? So there wasn't a lot of teaching because I was supposed to already know some of the things. But when you got in ministry, I'd never been in ministry before, didn't know what it looked like. I'd only been in the church a little while outside of college. In fact, it was very short time outside of college. I worked in youth ministry a little bit, volunteer. But then when I got in full-time ministry, I was given an office. And basically my first day in the office was, hey, there's your office. And I opened up the door, and I couldn't open up the door. There was so much junk in there. All right, well, I knew what to do then. I cleaned out the office, right? I found a place to sit. But when it got on into the ministry detail side of stuff, like how do you plan events? Nobody had ever told me how to plan events. I'd only seen it, but it doesn't mean it was right or wrong. And so there was this moment that I was nervous to move forward because I was scared to take a wrong step. And what I realized was is the leaders that were around me, especially my first two pastors that I worked for, wanted me to do my best. And then when I couldn't figure it out, then ask for help. And asking for help hurt a lot in the first few years of ministry, because it was like, I'm supposed to be able to do this job. And, I could read the word and I could understand scripture a little bit, and I might have to ask for a theological question or help because I hadn't had the training at that time. But as far as just doing ministry, asking for help doesn't make sense, right? And so the one thing I had to tell myself was, it's okay to ask. In fact, that's how I found help. The more people I put around me, the more people I had pour into me, because I was now asking for help. I think a lot of young ministers and a lot of young leaders and for that matter, even young Christians are scared to ask for help from somebody because they're afraid they're going to look like they don't know. And guess what? It's okay not to know.
Yeah, we can like, especially if you're in a leadership position, you can feel the weight of like wanting to be the guy who gets it right and wanting to be the guy who is like the one who just nails it every time excellently the first time in. Like, I know I can speak for myself. Like, I've always just wanted to be the guy who people look at and they're like, how old are you on stage, man? Like you can speak so eloquently, or you seem so wise, and things along those lines. And the feeling of wanting to live up to the expectation of pastor, the expectation of leader, and the weight that those things can carry, the expectation of that will make you feel like, well, I have to have an answer. I can't ask, because if I show vulnerability, I will look weak. Yeah. And that is something, that's a real fear, I think, that I've do experience as a young leader,
Even today, I've been in ministry almost 25 years, and that's a long time. But we're at a place in our church to where, as a pastor, I've never been here before. I've been in churches that have been here. So one of the things I do on a regular basis is reach out to pastors that are further along in their ministry or in their church than I am, and I ask questions. See, sometimes it's the questions. One leader once told me, it's the questions that are not asked that are the dumb ones. And so that really stuck with me. And so I ask questions. I mean, there's not a bad question. The ones that aren't asked are the ones that are the dumb ones. So ask the questions. Ask for someone to help you in youth ministry or executive pastor work or whatever. Wherever you're at in life, ask those questions, because you're only going to get better if you ask. I've surrounded myself with a lot of people that are much smarter than I am. Mm-hmm. And asking them the questions to them it makes them feel needed, even where they're at in life. Some of them are a lot bigger churches than I'm at. Mm-hmm. And so I'll be like, hey, where'd you make the next jump? And I'm not afraid to ask. So that's one thing I would say in your ministry side of it. Ask the questions there. And then, you said marriage next, or was it? I don't remember.
Yeah,
was it?
Marriage.
So, I guess I can say we're approaching, we're 25 years, not 25 years yet, 23 this year, but 20 years ago, man, I honestly didn't know how to be a husband. I didn't know what it looked like. I just thought you got married and that's what you were supposed to do. And the more I was in the relationship, the more I realized that my wife, what she has needs of are different than my needs. And to look back at myself when I was younger and be like, hey man, what were you, I remember the young age, you're a little bit older than where I was when we first got married, but I remember the long nights with, we had youth group. I was a youth pastor. And I remember just hanging out with those guys playing video games all night, right? And so I didn't think a thing about our marriage at that point, but I was like, what is Christina doing? Well, she's just kind of waiting around until they leave so that we can have a discussion. What I realized is, she was my number one priority. And if I could go back and tell myself that, not that these kids didn't matter, because my job was a student pastor, right? Not that the things that I was doing as a student pastor didn't matter, but I spent a lot of time trying to make other people happy, and I missed the idea of being home and being present to make Christina happy. Now, praise God, she's an awesome wife that lets me do all kinds of things. But if I could go back, I would be like, hey, your number one priority. I think we talked about a conversation earlier. Number one priority in ministry is your family. And if I miss that opportunity to spend time with my wife. One of the things that we've done over the last 20 years is have date days. And we'll go, and it may be a date day that looks like a real date. Back in the old days, we used to be dinner and a movie. I don't know what you guys do now. I mean, maybe rock climb or something. I don't know. But we still have those. We still have those weekly. Most of the times it'll be go catch a lunch or sit down at lunch and talk about life or the kids or ministry or just whatever's going on. But we'll make some of them special. Some of them will be nice restaurants. Some of them will be fast food restaurants. Some of them will be just going shopping at Target. I mean, and we make a commitment day in and day out to put each other first. Mm-hmm. And I think people are scared to, for instance, being in ministry, you there may be a moment, you and I haven't really talked about this, so I don't know, but there may be a moment to where your marriage life suffers because you've allowed the priorities of your personal life at church or your personal life outside of the walls of the church get in front of that marriage life. And so if I could go back to my young self and say, hey, put her first in everything, and then everything else is going to be easier.
So prioritize
your marriage. And even further on that, when you get children, don't look. If I could go back, man, I've got a almost 21-year-old now and almost a 16-year-old. And if I could go back to the days that they were running around and wanted to go to the park with Dad, oh man, I would give up anything to do that. But the world taught us that you had to, answer all the phone calls and you had to do the emails, and they couldn't wait. Look, I'm just going to be honest with you. If you lose your family, your ministry is no longer effective. And I realized that probably a lot later than I needed to. And now, look, my family comes first. In fact, if Christina was to call in the middle of the podcast, like we've not talked about it, I would stop the podcast and we'd answer it. We don't want to have to try that, but that's how the priorities. My boys, if they were to call, I would answer because they never call me. So now I'm like, if they answer, no, they're more important. We can redo this. Right. So don't miss that opportunity to put your family first, your marriage first. And it can be as simple as just, hey, I'm going to give you time. We're marriage conference coming up, right? So we're going to be talking about a lot of things in that. But what we realize is I'm a morning person. I get up early in the morning, I'm ready to go, and I'm ready to have conversation. Christina's not. She is a night owl. She'd rather stay up. So we've got to have a balance that somewhere in the middle we have to meet and be able to discuss life. And so that's why we often do it at lunch or we do it over dinner or something that we can be present. And look, when we're in those moments, nobody gets through to me. Some people may be like, oh, well, I'm always on call. That's true. But when I'm with my wife or my family, look, on Friday nights, everybody knows you're not going to get me. If you want to come talk to me, guess where you're going to come? You're going to come to a football field. Why? Because my kids only have so many Friday nights that I can be there for them and I'm not missing it. Now, what does the world teach? Oh, no, everybody else comes first. My family comes first. And it's something that my first pastor taught me. He was like, hey, your family's going to always have to come first. And I didn't even get it when he told me. And I kind of put it off. And now I'm like, I'm not missing it for nothing,
One of the practical ways that I like to check my priorities and to focus in on my priorities is I audit my time every now and then. I actually try to track where I'm spending time during the day. Every now and then, I don't do this very regularly, but every now and then when I feel like my priorities are out of line, I will check how much time I'm spending doing different things throughout the day. Yeah. And then I'll see how that reflects my priority list. And if the word and prayer with God is not high enough on that list, then it shows that what I'm saying my priority is and what my actual priority is are not, reflective in my time. And I do the same thing with my marriage at times. It's embarrassing to me, honestly, how many times I look back and I go, ooh, when's the last time I took Kelsey on a date that wasn't us sitting on a couch at our house, you know? And actually spending intentional time putting my phone down and trying to just talk to my wife and care and love on her. That's my practical way of trying to focus my priorities. I literally will check my time. I will check how much time I'm doing different things. So
if you don't make a conscious decision on these things to put a priority, not only, and we didn't even talk about the spiritual side of things, priorities got to be in place. Like for me, I learned years ago that for me, the only time I'm going to be able to make the day right, and even to spend time with Christina, is to start my time with God. You may be a night person to where, you do yours at night or whatever, but it all starts with that relationship with God. And then it flows down to your marriage and then to your family and then onto the church or wherever you're at.
What was your quote from this past Sunday? It was a really good one. Complacency has killed more
relationships. I don't even remember what it is,
what
to be
was
honest.
it?
I don't know.
Oh, it was such a good quote. But it was something along the lines of like complacency has killed more relationships or more marriages than anything else.
Right. Yeah.
Or
not
something
doing
like
anything
that.
about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We talked about, that's amazing. It's amazing.
And
but
you can get into rhythms in your marriage to where you stop prioritizing, you stop spending active, intentional time, and you can just chill and do nothing away your marriage and realize you're married to somebody you don't even recognize anymore.
But that's not what it's all about, right?
Right.
Like we have to prioritize our families first. In order to be good pastors or even leaders, we have to put a family first. There's so many people that are failing because they forget to do that. Mm-hmm. And so I'm telling you, hey, go spend time with your wife. Go make it a priority. Have the date days. Have the whatever it looks like to you. But you've got to have that time. Like you've got to be able to again ask questions and then spend the time. And then the third one was what? Financial?
Just life. Just life. Whatever realm of that you want to jump into.
So, man, I never had anybody talk to me about finances. You know this is probably now better than anybody around me, I would say. Finances are one of the things that makes me run. It makes me, I guess it's kind of what God's put inside of me. But nobody told me 20 years ago that investing part of my income into my future retirement was a thing. I knew a lot of people did it. I found out later they did it early in life, but nobody told me until I was 30, 32 years old. And then somebody's like, hey, are you investing? I'm like, what's investment? I didn't know. It wasn't a thing back then. Like people just did it, but they didn't talk about it, So I'm telling everybody now, start investing some of your money into your retirement. At 26 years old, you can put just a couple of $100 a month back and become a millionaire by the time you're 60. By just putting a little bit of money back, starting now. If you're 20 years old, the number goes down. If you're 30 or 40, you're waited way too long, but start now. Like we talked about this, I think last time. Today's the best time to start if you didn't do it yesterday, right? Yeah. 20
yesterday
years ago
was the best
me,
day to start. Today's the best.
Yeah. Like don't wait. And man, I had so many people. In fact, Christina was one that told me that I didn't listen. Again, not listening to people around you. She told me, man, this Facebook thing is going to be a thing, And I was like, oh, come on, nobody's going to use it. But if I'd invested into some of the stuff that she was early on, like from now on, if Christina thinks this is going to be big, I'm going to listen to my wife. All right. It goes back to point number 2.
Yep.
Spend quality time with your wife. But she said, Amazon's going to be huge because people are going to order things online. Right. Now we have boxes at our door every single day. If I'd have invested $1,000 into Amazon stock, where would I be today? If I'd have been invested $1,000 into Facebook in 2004, where would I be today? If I'd invested $1,000 in Bitcoin when I thought about it, where would I be today? So,
So your advice to yourself 20 years ago is invest in Amazon.
Invest in Amazon, Facebook, Instagram, Bitcoin. Whenever that came out in 2013 maybe? I missed some of this because I was scared to spend $1 or $100. I thought the $100 was going to keep me, to the next meal or something. But, invest somewhere, get your IRAs, get your 401ks, get your Roth IRAs, after tax money, that kind of stuff. I can go all day on this, and I'm sure that's not what the focus of this needs to be.
Just to be clear, we're not giving investing advice.
No.
Please just invest in a retirement account.
Invest in a retirement account.
I butchered the quote, so I have to fix it. Yesterday was the best day to start investing. Today is the second best day. I said it wrong the first time.
Yeah, well, I didn't even catch it because I'm so excited about investing.
I'm so like OCD, it was killing me, just not fixing it in my head.
Well, just start somewhere.
Yeah.
Somebody that says, I've only got, Pastor, I don't have any money, then start at $10 a month. Stop drinking, stop eating out a couple of meals a month and put that money back, because again, once you get to be my age, you've kind of waited a little bit too long. And somebody listening to this may say, hey, I'm over 40 and I can't do it. It's too late. No, start now. And it simply is because it goes into a priority thing. I want to be able to spend time with my wife before I'm old and can't spend time with my wife.
Yeah.
I want to be able to take my kids places. And that's why we invest in family trips yearly. You know that about us. We're going to go on a family trip every single year. Does it cost me money? Absolutely. But I'm investing in my family and that investment can't be measured in money.
Okay. So to get us back on kind of the original topic of mentors, what would your advice be to a young person in general? Doesn't have to be in ministry, but if that's where you want to go with it, we absolutely can. What would your advice be to a young person? How should they go about obtaining a mentor?
Well, it goes back to what we said, I think, in the first point about ministry and what it looked like. Ask for help. It's that weird, awkward question to be like, hey, will you mentor me? Like, would you pull up to somebody and be like, hey, I need some advice? But you literally have to go somebody. And chances are, most people are willing to pour into your life. Like, most people are willing to give you some advice. And the more you ask and the more you're attentive, the more they're going to give you. If you walk in and go, Pastor Jason, I want to know how to do my life, I'm going to be like, oh, and you sit down and you say, I got 10 minutes to do it. And I'm just going to look at you and be like, hey, but if you go, hey, I want to spend once a week and I want to talk about these things, then chances are somebody's going to do it. I've got some friends of mine that I call and I say, hey, once a month, I need a 15-minute conversation with you. And I want whatever you can say to me in those 15 minutes, I'm just going to sit and listen. So I've got those guys I will just call and be like, hey, it's a monthly call. Tell me what I need to know. And whatever they tell me, I'm downloading, into my heart. So I'm the kind that's the same way. If somebody says, now look, you're only going to be able to effectively mentor a couple people at a time if you're doing it right? That's the discipleship process. I can do a huge group, but Jesus even showed us what it looked like to mentor people. He had a group that followed him around, over 100 people that would follow Jesus around. Then he took it down to the 12 disciples, and he was like, okay, I'm going to take you this far. Then he took it down to the 3, and then even took it down to the 1 and be like, hey, I'm pouring into you directly. The others are going to get a little bit, but these 3 are going to get more, and John's going to get the most, right? So,
yeah.
I think asking and not being afraid to ask the questions, I have asked some people that I thought would turn me down. And believe it or not, they were like, anytime you want, here's my number, call me. And some of these leaders have been high quality leaders I don't think I have access to. And I call them on a monthly basis just to get that 15 minutes worth. And I have asked people in different fields to tell me different things. So I've got somebody in the business field that I call about once a month. And I'm like, hey, tell me what's happening in business. How can the church look more like a business and on the business side of things? Because the church functions as a business Monday through Friday. I mean, we get calls every day about how to help people and what to do and where to spend the money and all this kind of stuff. So I want to have that business sense. But then I've got somebody that I call if I'm very rarely call somebody about marriage, but I've got a guy that I will call and say, hey, tell me what you would do. I've got somebody that I talk to every month about ministry that's in a bigger church than we are that I can go, hey, we're at this place. What did you do to make the jump? And it's because I've asked. Here's the thing. Most people aren't going to look at you and go, hey, Wesley, I want to mentor you because I see that potential. But somebody's going to take the time to sit down with you and be like, okay, yeah, Wesley, I'll be happy to share, 15 minutes or 20 minutes.
I think a key for me in that realm has been able to be humble enough to recognize and appreciate a leader in your life. In fact, I think for me, especially, this is something I did a lot early on, was I would try to make sure you knew I appreciated all the battles that you would fight for me that I didn't know about. And I would try to make sure you knew I appreciated the things in which that you did as a leader for me. In fact, I think it was a week or 2 ago, I think I sent you a text and I was like, hey man, I hope you know how much I appreciate all the things you do and all that you've done for us as a staff and for our church. Yeah. And I think that goes a long way for a leader.
Absolutely.
In letting them know, like, this person's humble enough to love on someone, to recognize what a leader's doing for them. So having that humility, number one, is really, really good. And like you were saying, having the boldness to ask for help, to go to somebody and go like, hey, I could really use some advice here, and I think you may know more than me. Yeah. That goes such a long way, because then that person that you're talking to knows that they actually have an open channel to pour in. Sure. Because I can say, as a leader, there have been numerous times I have tried to invest in someone and just gotten the thanks.
But see, that's the difference.
Right.
You're most of the, like, I'd pour into a lot of people and they don't want to hear it.
Right.
I mean, I do that every Sunday, right? Like, I mean, I'm not, no offense, but you're right. We talk about this, but some people grab it, some people don't.
Right.
But when you see someone is genuinely interested in having those tough conversations and being able to walk through them, then it makes you want to be able to pour out more to them. For instance, you and I've had this relationship, and the more you ask, the more I tell you, the deeper we go, right? So with me, it's not always somebody that's doing maybe better than I am. It's somebody that's been there before. It doesn't even matter what kind. It just depends on where you're looking at. Like, if I'm looking for relationship advice, it may not even be within the church. It may be somebody that I've met along the way, or a business advice outside of it. And those relationships, they can come from someone in an organization larger or smaller than you. It's just the value that you want to put in them. And do I care about the person that's going to pour into me, or that I'm going to pour into? And out there, I would say, hey, if you desire a mentor, don't be afraid to ask. The worst they can say is no. Like I've asked some crazy people to pour into my life, and I don't recall a time that any of them said no way, man, no way. And some of them were people that I didn't think would ever talk to me again, or ever text me back. And it's just about going, hey, I know I'm not where I need to be. I've got to keep growing. That's found throughout Scripture, right? Look at all we talked a little bit about this just a few minutes ago. All the people throughout the Bible that the mentorship relationship was there, and they learned just by doing things daily. That's why I think life groups is so important. Like, you're going to go in a life group, and man, you're going to hear something. I sit with men every week, and some of those men in that classroom are teaching me things that I never thought about before. And it's by putting a circle around you that you can grow from. And look, if you ever get to the point that you know everything, then I feel sorry for you.
Right.
Like, because I'm always learning, I'm always reading, I'm always talking to people, I'm always listening for what could be done better.
That's a really good point, because I heard a quote one time from a pastor. I'm not going to call their name out. They're a famous celebrity pastor, so they have no idea who I am anyways. But they made a quote essentially that was, I'm not going to listen to any pastors whose churches are not bigger than mine. And that quote scares me.
Yeah.
Because when you get a mindset in your head that the only people that can pour into you are people that have achieved something greater than you, I think you've missed a whole wealth of people in which that God values that you should too. Like, having the humility enough to listen and allow people to influence you in which that may not have achieved something in some kind of world in which that you're wanting to, but that doesn't mean that they don't bring value, and they don't bring that they don't bring truth into the equation. And that's not saying that you have to set up a mentor of somebody in your life. That, for instance, that's not saying that you should have me come be a mentor in your life, but that's also not saying that there aren't times that I might not say something that may ring true. They're probably few and far between. No, but there are moments that it happens. You know what I'm saying? And I would say that as well for maybe leaders who are in that latter season. Not that you're in a latter season, just to be clear.
Oh, wow. But, well, I think that's about it for the podcast today.
No, just to be clear, I'm not talking about you, but I'm talking about leaders who are in high stages in their life and in their ministry and have achieved great things, or are at a place in their career where they've done a lot, or just people in general who are at these heights, let's say, that have achieved up to the mountaintop. Having that ability to have patience enough to listen to someone who might be beneath them, that brings so much value to that young person, and that will cause so much, I think, commitment from them. And I can say that from our personal relationship. You've been patient with me and allowed me to probably say things and have opinions that I have not earned at times, which has caused me to buy in even more to leadership, being patient enough.
Well, let me say this. One of the things that's important, especially in our life, our church, it may not affect anybody that's listening to this, but this is just where I'm at. When we got to Heritage, there was it was becoming an older church, and not that I didn't love it, but I realized in order for us to grow, we had to get younger. So for me, and intentionally hiring younger people like yourself, like Kelsey, and like our children's pastors that we've had, we were intentional about it. And the reason is because I know I'm getting older. I know I'm not getting any younger. I know that some of the things that I believe God's called me to do is not over yet. And trust me, I'm not handing off the torch yet. But what I'm saying is allowing younger people to be around me, just listening to your language. I mean, one of the things I've laughed about forever is the dress that even now I'm doing on Sundays as norm for me. Mm-hmm. I mean, I fought it so hard with you about, you were like, hey, can you just come off just a little bit? And for anybody else, I don't care if it works for your church or not. For us, our key was to try to go younger. Not just younger, but we wanted to reach a younger audience. In order to do that, I had to listen to some of the advice that I thought at the time, I don't even mind telling you, I thought there's no way this is going to affect anything, but it does. My boys are younger than me, and believe it or not, I go to them and go, okay, hey, I'm about to buy these pair of shoes. Are they cool or are they not cool? And
right.
$50 means it's cool for me, but it may be a not a cool pair of shoes. And so instead of just buying something that everybody's gonna be like, those shoes are ugly, I'm gonna go, hey boys, are these shoes cool or not?
Yeah.
And the same thing that's happened in ministry. I've asked you guys, and I believe it's got to be, back and forth. I mean, so a mentorship, a correct mentorship shouldn't just be one person pouring into the other. It could be both ways. In fact, I've got a mentor that's been in my life really since I was young, and he's never pastored a church. In fact, he's been a leader, but he's never pastored a church. And if I was going to ask him about just life in general, or if I was going to ask somebody about a spiritual question, or a question about God, or a question about that, a lot of the times I'm not going to any of these other pastors that are in my circle or on my phone book. Mm-hmm. I'm going to this leader. I'm going to this leader because I value who he is and who he is to God. And he's given me some of the best advice probably I've ever had in my life. But he's not a guy that pastors a church of 1,000 or 2,000, or he's not a guy that's ever pastored a church. He's been in ministry a little, but he's never been, the guy that everybody would look at and be like, that's the guy. But that's the guy that I would go to if I needed something. And I think we all have to not just look for status, because look, there's always going to be somebody bigger, better out there. You got to look at somebody that cares about you. Mm-hmm. And I know that if I was to call this person, they would answer, and they would give me the advice I needed in the moment. So I think that's where it is. Maybe that helps. Maybe it doesn't, but that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not sure how we are on time, but I think my last thing that I would want to talk about is, in the book of Job, there's the three friends who all bring, different vantage points and try to explain in different ways why God has allowed certain things to happen to Job. I forget their names. I think it's Bildad, Zophar?
And L, yeah.
Something like that.
And something with an E.
Yeah, well, so then later on, a young person comes up. Well, not comes up. He was there the whole time. But his name's Elihu.
Yeah, there we go.
And Elihu then speaks up and says something. And he's essentially like, I feel like I'm like new wine in an old wineskin. I'm about to burst. Mm-hmm. And he says, I thought wisdom came with age, so I let those who are older than me speak first. Mm-hmm. Right? And first of all, there's something important there, that wisdom does not necessarily come with age. Wisdom is a gift from God. So if you are looking for more wisdom and looking to grow in that way, ask God for it. God's the one in which who grants wisdom. I mean, that's Solomon, right?
That's in the word. Yeah.
Solomon asks for wisdom and God gives it.
Yeah, he gives it, grants it.
God is the one in which who can grant wisdom. Mm-hmm. But then the second part of that is, just because you have the answer doesn't mean that now's the time to say it.
Yeah.
If you're a young leader, knowing when to speak is almost more powerful than what to speak.
Sure. Knowing
when to. And that is something that I have constantly battled with myself on, because I like to hear myself talk sometimes.
Yeah.
So learning how to be quieter around the table, because, and this is something I learned. I listened to a guy who's his name's Michael Franzese. He's a former mob guy. He was in the mob or whatever.
Yeah, we're not endorsing that.
No, definitely. He's a Christian now.
Oh, he is? Okay,
yes,
okay.
Yes, loves the Lord. So he talked about like negotiations around a mob table, and something that he said that he's always believed in, and something that I've heard and I think is a great statement, is the quietest person around the table is the most powerful person around the table, because when they speak, everyone listens.
Yeah.
So being quieter, listening, observing, taking in everything in different perspectives, and then when you speak, let it have weight and let it have meaning. Just because you're right doesn't mean that now is the perfect time to let everybody know that you're right. And I think that can go a long way for young leaders to learn and to grow and to become more inviting for mentors.
Yeah.
Because when a mentor knows that they can trust you not to overstep or overreach or overspeak, then they're more likely and more willing to want to invest in you. Is there anything you want to add to that before we close?
No, man, we could go a lot of places with this. We could go a long time talking about the relationships, mentor relationships. But here's what I will say. I know that so many people get to points in their life, whether it be, somebody graduated high school, now they're looking for that next step. They don't know where to go. They're scared of what the possibilities are. They get in college, they really don't know what it's going to look like. Somebody graduates college, I'm in life, here we go. Each one, there's a step, right? And the key is, I think it all goes back to what we talked about in the very beginning. And that's making sure that it's okay not to have every answer. It's okay to ask. It's okay to question. It's okay. Throughout Scripture, we see the relationships, both the relationship I can see of both ways is you got Paul and Barnabas, and that relationship that Barnabas actually was the mentor to Paul.
I was going to say Barnabas kind of the mentor there.
Yeah, and so but they pulled a little bit, and then Paul in turn then took what he knew and turned around and gave it to others. All right, you got Timothy, you got Titus, the list can go on and on. But what the key is this: if you're getting poured into from a mentory point of view, then you also in turn, and I believe I heard this in a leadership class somewhere, but you aren't as good as a follower as probably you are teacher sometimes. What that means is once you learn, you should turn around and teach what you know.
In fact, that's the only true way to master something.
Yeah.
Is to teach it.
Yeah, when you're learning, then for me to take what I've learned and apply it, I'm then going to learn how to do it. All right. For example, my son plays football. You know that. He learns a technique on the field, but in order for it to work in game times, what does he do? He spends hours and hours and hours of practicing that one technique, that one route, that one that how to catch, right? And so when we get something from someone above us, then for us to make it practical, then we have to put it into action or teach it again to someone else. So think about how the church would look like if somebody came to Christ, all right, maybe comes to you and says, "Hey, Pastor Wesley, I don't know what it means to be a follower of Christ. Will you teach me?" And then Pastor Wesley goes, "Okay, I've got 15 minutes this week. I'd like to tell you about being a follower of Christ." Then you pour into them 15 minutes. And then that person goes, "Okay, Pastor Wesley, I got it." Now, guess what knowledge they have? They can in turn now turn around and tell what Pastor Wesley told them, what they got to somebody else that might not be as far along as they are. So it's that relationship of hey, I'm gonna allow somebody to pour into my life, and then in turn I'm gonna take what I know and then teach it to others. Then it keeps not only you sharp, but it also keeps those around you even sharper. So let's see, 26 years old. Is that how old you are? 20?
Yes, I'm 26.
26. So they're 20 years older. They know how old I am now.
Yep.
26 years old. Who can you look around and you be the mentor to?
Right.
That can turn around and mentor a 15-year-old, or they can turn around and mentor, a 15-year-old can then turn around and go to kids' church and help some of those kids come to know Jesus, right? So it's just a relationship that can happen both upward and downward according to where they are. But the more we put into it, the more we're going to get out of it. And I think that's just kind of what we should have.
If you are a mentee, you have the responsibility of being a mentor.
Absolutely.
It's that great Craig Groeschel quote, and maybe this is the best way to end it. Great leaders make great leaders who make great leaders.
Great leaders, yeah.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to be a mentee and to be a mentor. If you are invested into, you should invest into others. Great leaders make great leaders who make great leaders.
Absolutely.
You want to say John 10:10?
Sure.
You start it.
The thief comes to steal,
Kill, and destroy.
but I have come
That you might have life
and have it
to the fullest.
There we go.
Thank you so much for joining us. Hey, make sure to like and subscribe or leave a review, whatever platform you're watching this on. Leave us a review or give us 5 stars or comment. Do whatever you can to help this reach vast audiences. We appreciate you and we love you.